Hey, what's up everybody? Bdf coming at you with another video. Alright, so I'm gonna walk over to Trader Joe's. Honestly, don't need too many things, but I figured I'd just walk over there anyway. Mainly because I bought meat from Target and it did not go well for me. I didn't like the meat. It didn't digest very well. It had a weird thing about it. So I'm done buying Target's beef. I prefer Trader Joe's beef just in general. After trying back and forth, it's very clear to me what beef I prefer if I'm going to eat that way. And I just decided to go against that last time, and it was a mistake. It was a mistake, y'all. I knew better, and I should have went with my first mind on that one. But yeah, man, I feel pretty good. I hope everybody's having a good day. You know, when I think of food and I'm talking about food, I can't help but consider that there are people out there who don't have, man. And you know, usually when I would say that or would hear people say that, it's like, yeah, that's inevitable. People are starving in the world. That doesn't mean that we don't enjoy our meal. That doesn't mean that we starve ourselves to death because they can't eat, or, you know, as my ex-girlfriend would prefer me to do, never throw food away, because there are people starving in other places. So anytime you throw food away, you're doing some disservice to them. Like, I don't really subscribe to that, because it's like, unless I'm going out and donating the food, all I'm doing is stuffing myself in the name of something that's not in front of me. And while I do very much want to serve those who are starving, it's not like I can just find people who are starving at the end of a meal and go outside and give them something that's more than halfway eaten. You know, it's like I don't know how well that would be appreciated by the people who are homeless around me. You know what I mean? Like, the idea of someone starving is not something to just gawk at or whatever, just like brush aside. But in that same vein, there are certain things that you also don't have to force yourself into just because other people are going through something that is unfortunate. And so that's how I think. But when I look at what's going on in Gaza, it takes me to a different space as it pertains to the respect that I have for people who are, you know, for the idea that people are without. Because I know that they're being forced into starvation as a weapon of war against them. And you see what's going on right now. Israel starving those people in Palestine. It's really a different type of reality to the understanding that people are starving in this world. And that's really what I'm here to say. There's a different reality. When I see it in my phone, I see emaciated children who don't have but a bite to eat. It becomes a problem when you look at it that way, or look at those things rather. When you look at it the way that I do, and don't consider that starvation is not just a product of poverty, but it's being used by people to hurt other people. This is why I come to you and I say, you know, I use my voice in the way that I do to try to bring light to what's going on in Gaza. Because the different things that are happening to those people, the different ways that are being used against them in war, and the way that they're trying to genocide these people, is just deeply, deeply sadistic and inhumane. What they're experiencing there. And you know, I deeply resent it. And I was listening to an individual from that area. I think he's from this, I believe he's Palestinian, but I don't believe he lives there. I don't really know. But he was essentially saying that he was sick of pro-Palestinian people who would show their food on Instagram and on their socials, knowing that these people are starving, showing their food, displaying food, you know, laughing over a meal and stuff like that, while people are starving. And these people who you say you stand for, some of which may even follow you on your socials, are seeing this. And that type of thing makes me understand just how deeply disconnected we can tend to be when we have certain things that we take for granted of privilege that others are in need of. Makes me reevaluate my whole stance on throwing away food. It makes me reevaluate my entire stance on a lot of things that I don't have a heart for or what have you. And being raised in this country, it makes you resent it to a degree, to a very deep degree, very extensive degree, and how we've been afforded so much, but raised to appreciate so little, take it for granted so much. And so that's what I wanted to just express with my channel over the course of however many episodes this is my evolution and understanding. The understanding that I have of the severity of circumstances that are much worse than mine, and how I would long to have a greater compassion than display the compassion that I do have, in hopes that it'll be sufficient and inspiring others to be compassionate. And so that's what I see there, man. This is devastating. I don't think we know how to meet the urgency of the moment, if I'm being completely honest with you, which is in and of itself speaking to our detachment to the urgency itself for what it means to actually starve, for which most of us don't experience, don't know to respect, or if we would try to imagine it, it wouldn't give us proper context. These energies of detachment, as we talked about in a previous video, can be very offensive when pointed at you as a person of black skin, of a person of God who has faith and doesn't want to be persecuted for his faith, or doesn't want to be persecuted for his skin color. It can get a bit rough when you see people of a different privilege, of a different sort of lifestyle, not really respect your position, only to look inward and realize that to another degree you're doing the same thing to someone else. You know, we talk about well, I don't think I've ever mentioned this on my channel, but I've seen it online and social media, people criticizing white people for being a part of the oppression Olympics, so to speak. Like, you're wanting to be oppressed so bad is a narrative that's very prevalent in a lot of conversations. And you see people display that stereotype for certain in a lot of cases, unfortunately. But how disrespectful of me to, when looking at people like people in Palestine who are dealing with what they're dealing with right now, invoking the severity of what happened to my ancestors or what happened to my people as a means of trying to qualify myself worthy of understanding, or qualify myself with a certain empathy that otherwise is afforded them in their time of need. How disrespectful of me to say, well, y'all went through 75 years of this, we went through 400 years of this. I may have been guilty of even saying something like that at one point. I might have. You would have to tell me. But at the end of the day, I just don't receive that in a very positive way at all. I just think that is another form of privileged detachment that we've been talking about today. Privileged detachment. And a desire to be a part of the quote-unquote oppression Olympics, to get the gold medal of that. Who had it the worst? Who had it the longest? I qualify. We see people of privilege in different levels do this. We have that type of gaslighting done to us as black people, and I'd imagine Palestinian people are having it done by black people toward them in some cases, or by people, not even just black people, whoever, toward them in certain cases, when they try to express their need for the support that they need, or try to express their pain or the extent of their suffering as they cry out for help or what have you. I think there's a world where you want them to understand what you've been through, as to, if in good spirits, hopefully help them understand that this isn't as worse as it can get, and hopefully it doesn't get any worse from here. as to inspire strength within them to keep going. But other than that, I don't know that it does much constructively in the conversation about their suffering. I think that in a space like America, where I can look at my Native American ancestors and my Black American ancestors, or African ancestors, and always feel a certain entitlement to the sensitivity that I may have being respected by those around me, especially white people. I may demand that they not use my words of hurt. I may even be willing to fight and die on that hill. And there may be a lot of people who agree with me, and that's a good thing if you ask me. But what good is being able to relate to something if you don't call upon it when it's most necessary to? That's the question I have for myself and for anybody who would think that way. What's the point of quote unquote pulling the race card, even though I hate that phrase, as most of us do, if not for the understanding that we mimic those who gaslight us when we behave a certain way toward others when they're expressing their pain, embarking upon our pain in the history of our suffering as a means of suffocating that for which is their cries out for whatever help they need. I've seen people do this. I ain't interested in helping you because you didn't help us. Or don't tell me about 75 years of occupation when we went through 400 years of slavery. Like, I've seen it. It ain't happening so often that I think you need to be alarmed by it as it pertains to how many times I've seen it and how it needs to stop. But just that it's been seen once is something that I think needs to be addressed. And that I can see it being done to us by people in spaces of privilege that I don't harbor, only makes me more intentional on not expressing that at all from within myself. Even if it comes naturally by way of the example that has been shown to me by them who've done it to me. It's very important that people of color not mimic the oppressor. When we get the power that we're looking for, or get the support that we're looking for, not just bask in the glory of that support as if we're entitled to it, like some type of supremacy, but more so be eager enough to pay forward the energy that's been given to us. Pay forward the mercy that's been provided us. Pay forward the solidarity that we've had stand with us in circumstances where it was needed. If not for paying it forward, what are we but undeserving as those who ultimately want to compete with us, who have privilege that we do not have? This is why I think it's incumbent upon every black person, every oppressed person, to put their voice where their ego's at and speak up on things that maybe don't apply to your pain in solidarity as somebody else who's going through it. Because many bodies maybe did it for you. And there are many people who are much more privileged than you who don't care to, for the same reasons that you don't care to. And you passing forward that same indifference that ultimately you resent. My goal is to not pass forward that resentment that ultimately I resent. That indifference, rather, that I ultimately resent. And so that's what I want to say. I do not wish to mimic the suppressed or the oppressor, but to more so stand in solidarity with the suppressed and tell them that I can relate to whatever degree I do, while simultaneously saying, but I didn't go through what you went through, so let me hear what it is you have to say. And I would hope they would do the same for me on my darkest day. I am not at all at peace with what I see going on in the Middle East. Not at all. I don't want anyone who sees me, who hears me converse about what's being done toward black people, to lose sight of that. That my mind and my heart is pointed in the direction of something that maybe isn't pointed at my people at this time. But I know well enough to know that it could be tomorrow once again. And I think all of us need to do that, think that as well. Instead of trying to further suppress other people's pain by gaslighting them or overqualifying them with your own, how about we do something to try to make us all feel better? How about that be the position from which we want to take? When we express whatever we got to say out of our face? 400 years of pain should have gave us some understanding of how horrible it is. Generational trauma is something that we know all about. And so why not act like that and be of service to those who may be facing what could be the beginning stages of generational pain? Because I can't see how what it is the Palestinian people are going through doesn't hurt for generations going forward. I can't imagine that genocide doesn't create a certain distance from hope for your people for generations. Freedom should not have to continue to be fought for, but just the same, it is in place to be fought for. And we must continue that fight for freedom, for not only your own people, but for everybody who will be without it. And as we mentioned in the last video, not just for the freedom of your mouth to be able to say offensive things at the behest of your own arrogance, or the right to stand with someone who commits genocide in the name of your own indifference, but rather stand in solidarity with individuals who have faced adversity, as to understand that that pain can be pointed at you someday once again, if not already, or for the first time if you've never gone through it. As I've talked about many times on this channel, I think that it's going to be more difficult for people who are indifferent in the future. People who display indifference today, it's going to be harder for them in the world tomorrow, where people are communicating with one another at a rapid pace, online and hearing conversations such as mine, all the way somewhere else outside of the United States. The gap between the oppressed is starting to shrink. And the space from which the oppressor is able to reign, those things that keep that together are starting to deteriorate. A lot of what it is that they've been standing on for a long time in the name of their indifference and their supremacy is now being revealed to all of us in real time about just how ugly it can be, just how selfish it can be, and how little self-respect it actually harbors in its actions toward expressing itself and invoking its privilege upon the rest of us. That supremacy was able to live comfortably in a space where the oppressed were divided and ignorant and not aware of one another. But I, as a descendant of the slaves, get to watch genocide. I get to hear conversations about things that I've never been told I should care about as an American. Like what's going on in India and Pakistan. raised to be indifferent to certain things because it happens in the Middle East. Well, now in this generation, there are people who are growing to understand themselves, witnessing these things, and are going to be inspired to do something that Americans have never been raised to do, and that's care. Not just as it pertains to a subject matter in school like social studies, but more so as an everyday conversation that we will have just like we would have about anything else that we celebrate in this country. This is where the gap is being bridged. It's not going to be so weird to talk about politics, because it ain't going to be considered politics. It's going to be considered humanity, human rights, decency, and the quest for morality in our world. And an end to forced poverty and supremacy and all these different energies that have only been able to exist comfortably in a separate world. This is why I tell you, I value the examples of people who stood in solidarity with others, who display a certain outside of stereotypes from within whatever skin they have, you know, people who've lived in a way that allows for others to live without so much extension of frustration upon that existence. People just let people be people, you know. There's so much more love in the world for people like that when you see so much of what it is that you see in the form of genocide and forced poverty, forced starvation. There's a certain reverence especially shown to those who are humanitarians, especially from within privileged households, people who have a lot but still give a lot, people who have a lot but still give a care, so to speak. They're going to be celebrated differently in the future. And the world is going to start getting tighter and tighter. The walls are going to start closing in on those who celebrate themselves in the name of themselves. They're going to be outcasted differently than they've ever been. They're going to be shunned differently than they've ever been. They're going to be understood as deeply disturbed and be spoken to in a certain way that they've never been spoken to before. It's going to be a certain pity that's going to be afforded them that isn't welcome in their lives. They want the pity that comes from being oppressed while oppressing people. But what they're going to get is the pity that comes from looking at somebody who's not well. The type of pity that's applied to somebody who wasn't raised with any morality, any dignity, any self-respect. The way you may look at somebody who may be deeply on drugs or deeply alcoholics or what have you. The way you look at people like that is the way we're going to start looking at people like this. Zionists, people like that. That's how we're going to look at you. Sad. You're very sad. Your ideology and the things that you believed in have robbed you of so much strength, so much happiness, so many friends, maybe even a happy home. How you restrict yourselves has robbed you of a lot. What you've been taught since you were a child is rotten for your mindset. It didn't show you how to love yourself enough to be reflected positively upon your last name as you engage in whatever conversations you do. You weren't taught how to truly bring about a good reputation in the future that's coming. You're going to see a lot of pity in the eyes of the people who engage in you, who communicate with you. You're going to see pity in their eyes in a different way as to where you used to see in fear and reverence, and sophistication, celebration. The new looks you're going to get are of regret, hurt, hope for a better you. People are going to start talking to you like you're a little slow. I'm telling you what's coming. I feel sorry for you. Even though you have so much, Even though you're at the top of the totem pole, you are depraved of something very, very simple. And that is dignity. That's what racists and people who are intolerant of others, people who are hell-bent on being the best and winning the oppression Olympics, they're going to receive a different energy pointed at them that's going to speak to how sorry they are and how ignorant they are and how lost they are, how weak they are. How misguided they've been, how self-destructive they appear to be, and how far away from their own happiness they actually are. This is why it's such a horrible thing that people teach their kids how to be intolerant and hateful. That's why it's such a horrible thing for people to carry forth isms, racism, sexism, all different isms into new generations, because the world that you're in, teaching your kid that is not the world they're going to be in when they grow up. They're going to be looked at as not well. They're going to be looked at as sad cases, sad races. And that's why I encourage everybody to have a relationship with God, man. A lot of us are raised in households where we're taught to be sorry, taught to be sad. Not sad as in depressed, but just sad as in how we engage in one another and how we think of others. And ultimately welcoming, as I like to say, of punches in the face. We're intolerant. We're not tolerant of other people. And don't respect people's, pain or whatever, cultures and different things, trigger words. And so we welcome certain things into our lives that end up bringing about things that are regrettable. People looking at us like we, were raised by wolves or something. People outcasting us and pushing us aside, saying, nah, we don't want the type of people around. Like, nah. They bring about a certain energy that we don't welcome in our circle. Talking bad about them while they're not looking type thing. Smiling at them but fake, Quick to throw them under the bus. Quick to turn their back on them. Quick to leave them stranded somewhere, that type of thing. Like that's what these people are actually welcoming with this type of ideology going forward. When people think about who they're gonna get over on, you racist, you supremacist, you intolerant person, you the ones they're gonna be turning on, bro. The world you in is gonna be as dark as the heart you have, because you are welcoming it with every passing day that you adapt to the ideology that you are better than anybody else and that you're supposed to be given a pass for disrespecting people. In the world that you head into, it ain't gonna look good to you, for you. Too many people are communicating about how they don't appreciate you. Too many people are starving while we're witnesses to their suffering. That's a world that your ancestors didn't know nothing about. People can look up and see the ugliness of your supremacy. Look up and see the ugliness of your activities. Look up and see the ugliness of your willingness to be disrespectful to people. All it ends up translating to is you being disrespectful to yourself. All it ends up translating to is you being devoid of something that humans should be able to receive upon birth, and that is a compassion that reflects positively upon themselves. The deeply hateful will not subscribe to such an ideology, and too will see the consequences of it. Those who use acrobatics as a means of not having to face this still will find themselves in a world where it is real just the same. That's the truth. It's still real even if you change the word around. If it's love to hate, you're still engaging in energy that's going to take away when you engage in hate. You can call the oppressed the terrorists, but when we look at how you treat who you call the terrorists, we will understand who's terrorizing who. You could change the laws to make it impossible for us to communicate, but we're still thinking what we're thinking. We still see what we see. And the moment we get an opportunity to, we're going to get around what it is that you do to save who you are suffering the ills that you are putting them through. This is what the oppressed need to understand. You can't change the mathematics. You can change the words. You can change the rules. You can make it impossible for someone to stand up for their rights, but all you're doing is reflecting negatively upon yourself historically. When people look back on not only what it is that happens, but how it transpires and who did what, they're going to see you messing with the laws to fit some immoral practice that a puppy would understand is no good. You starving a child, a baby bear would understand that that shouldn't be done. So you know the humans of the future are going to be able to see it. And something that's come really clear to me, very clear to me, is that a lot of times the powers that be are a bit short-sighted. And I was listening to an individual today talking about Palestine, communicating what's going on in his country and the difficulties, what it is that he's going through. His communication wasn't pointed at America. He was pointed at whoever was watching, but likely people either in his own country and places in the Middle East. You know, his accent was so thick. Luckily enough for me, he was speaking English, but I don't think that his intention was to communicate with American people. He was somebody who didn't even have a big following. This is somebody I just so happened to follow in this process. And you know whose music he was using? Michael Jackson's. A man that this country has disgraced. And he tried to disgrace this man as the worst person in the world, as a pedophile. I don't know what Michael did in his private time, I'm not certain. But the point is what dawned on me when watching that bit of content was that Michael Jackson's message in his music about healing the world and what about us, and they don't really care about us and various different things, you know, black or white, these type of songs, they outlast the smear campaign against him. And as it looks, will outlast the tenure of the people in power who were looking to smear him. They thought they were going to suppress the people in front of them in regards to Michael Jackson's reputation. That's what they were thinking about, is who was in front of them. We're going to ruin his life in the world today so that he can't get this, so that he isn't seen as that. But his message and his music bled through and it resonated with people who they couldn't even touch in places they weren't even paying attention to. And when they think about how to invoke the peace of the world that ultimately they're striving for, they thought of his music to best represent them. And this is why, this is the exact concept behind why I don't look to promote so much on this channel. Because I'm not short-sighted like that. I'm not short-sighted like that. I genuinely, fully believe that it's more important to speak to the people of the future and to the few who have the attention span and the compassion to listen to what it is I'm talking about than to reach the masses who are likely warped in propaganda that is only going to fit today, placed upon them by people with a sight that can't see past tomorrow. I'm not interested in chasing what the short-sighted are looking for because I'm afforded a greater wisdom. That's to say that I believe what I'm saying is going to age better than a lot of what it is people do for attention today. I believe the ideologies and the things that I speak of are going to resonate more so with people in the future than maybe it does with the country I'm in, the people I'm around. I think a lot of us have been trained and raised to be short-sighted. I've only gotten so far in our evolution as to be able to see but so far. That's not what the Lord allowed me the idea of in regards to my own self. He allowed me to see a bit further down the road. He allowed me to understand the concept that I just described to you in regards to Michael Jackson. I got to chase numbers in 2025. I need to chase substance that's going to last well past 2025. And my legacy, whatever it will be, it'll likely grow from there if necessary. And it doesn't even matter, because if I'm thinking about myself, then I'm not doing it right. The impact of what it is that I'm actually looking to put forth isn't best if its intention is to exalt self. If the moral of the story of what it is I'm trying to do is about exalting myself, then I've missed the point of the wisdom the Lord has brought into my heart from which to use with y'all in these videos. I'm belittling the faith that I claim to live by every day, which is that God is in control of all these things, that his measurements are more important than that of man's. That I don't need to exalt myself or boast or anything like that to feel confident, that I have a strength that doesn't require that about myself, and that what reflects positively upon my last name historically will likely go against a lot of what the status quo is currently. And if I'm wise enough to understand that, then I just have to be strong enough to override it with my intentions. If you knew better, you do better. Well, I know better in that regard. And so that's what I'm here to share with you guys, man. To aim higher than what it is they tell you to measure with. Aim higher in regards to your faith. If you truly believe in God, then you don't need to adhere to the measures of man as it pertains to what it is that they tell you need to be doing. What they tell you need to be doing is likely only going to get you so far, because they can only see but so far. And if you know better, then you will do better. That's the point. It's like Mike knew better. And that's why I tell you guys, one of the inspirations behind me speaking the way that I do on this camera is because I was raised by the ideologies of individuals like that, of whom may have laid their head down in disgrace, but their message bled through. Heal the world, save the children, all of these different messages that he truly meant, that he truly put in a lot of his music. It resonated with me as I grew to be a grown man, when he was speaking of people like me when I was a child. I was a child when he was saying save the children. I was a child when he was saying heal the world. I was a child when he was telling us that they didn't care about us. And so now as a grown man, I'm telling you that I hope to influence an entire new generation of people the same way, with a similar message. Now we need to save the children. That if you are no longer a child, it's your responsibility now to pay it forward. And save the children of the day you're in. Don't be one of these go along, get along men. Go along, get along women. Who are aligned with the short-sighted status quo that it so happens to be indifferent in your times. Like I could do in mine. It ain't no good for you. It's not good for the people that are following you. It's not good for your legacy and your last name. It ain't going to age as well as you standing away from that for the sake of what it is that you know is solidarity with other people's pain. If a child is starving, you share your meal. If a child's in danger, you provide shelter. You don't wait for nobody else. If you see something wrong, you stand up. Don't wait for everybody else. Be the leader. Someone else will follow you. And certainly don't let that for which is controlled by the enemy tell you that you're in trouble for doing what it is you're supposed to do. Because the Lord ain't going to bring about that type of trouble. That's not of God, man. God going to tell you to stand up. God don't tell you to put your foot down and not tolerate intolerance. God gonna tell you that he's with you and he has your back through the process of that, no matter what the enemy throws at you. That's what God is really gonna tell you. This is exactly what he told me. So I encourage you to hear that message. Even if it isn't placed upon your heart, you hear that message. And you understand that it was placed upon mine to give to you. That is your message. Bdf 44, I thank you all for watching. I'm out.